that's a good place for us to start though. Like, who is Gar Benn?
Oof.
Because
Who is Gar Benn?
Who is Gar Benn? Because I knew you as owner CityGym, and the guy that brought like Rascal apparel to Ireland.
Yeah.
And then obviously with USAPL Ireland, but then you replied to the podcast email with a whole laundry list of things.
Yeah.
Who is Gar Benn? We're kicking all the way back to the very beginning, because the most interesting thing when we start talking was you have had several like health complications in your early life, which I think is a fantastic story to tell from the beginning. So what was the exact name of it again?
Spontaneous pneumothorax.
Tell me what that is.
Okay, yeah. So spontaneous pneumothorax. Spontaneous, or should I say pneumothorax means collapsed lung. Spontaneous means they don't know why it happened. And I ended up having 3 of these over a course of a few years. Normally the follow-up question I get that is, how many lungs have you got? I only have 2, but one of them collapsed twice, right? So the initial one on the right side collapsed on February 15th, the day after Valentine's, right? And that night I had a bit of pizza, watched a Will Ferrell movie. We were talking about this before. And woke up the next day. And as I was getting out of bed, just this sharp pain in my chest. I had to kind of like hunch over and kind of bunker down. I was like, oh, Jesus. Maybe it's indigestion. Maybe it's something's going on. Like just this vicious pain up to the top of the chest. Then I realized I couldn't stand up straight. So this got worse and worse. And I kind of started freaking out a bit. And I'm kind of like really like over and above. I can't get up. I can't draw in a breath. Every breath I try to take, it's like someone's sticking like a hot knife into me. I was like, oh, fucking hell, what is going on, you know? So called my mother. I was living at home at the time. I was only 17. And I said, I think I need to go to the doctor. Something's wrong. So we went into this guy, Dr. Richter, South African doctor. He's lovely, right? And he was like, oh, let me see what's going on, you know? So he does this little test and he knocks on both sides of the back, top, bottom, just like that. And he goes, oh, you have a collapsed lung. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm still like, I'm on the chair. I'm like, okay, yeah. What is a collapsed lung? You know? And he goes, just the lung. It's after perforating the lining. The air has come out of the lung. It's filled the whole space around and it's squishing the lung down. So that's the pain you're feeling. So I'm like, yeah, cool story. You know, like, what do I do? I was like, do I go to the hospital? Do I go today? Do I go when? And he goes, well, you know, I've seen a lot of these in my time. I was in the army. You need to go like immediately. Like you need a surgery within the next couple of hours.
Right.
Like, oh, surgery. You know, like 17, you know, surgery, emergency surgery. All these alarm bells going off in my head. You're kind of, when you're that young and that oblivious to life, it's a real shock.
Yeah.
I have to go get surgery. It's such a crazy thing, you know? So I was there and, you know, into my mother's Fiat Punto and I was still bunkered down. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to go for surgery, you know? So we went out to the hospital and they said, okay, you know, it's about an 80% collapse. That's pretty huge. So we're going to put this drain tube in, right? And they're like, it's just a procedure. No big deal. So I was like, oh, class, unreal. Procedure, we're done. I'm back home tomorrow, right? And what I didn't realize at the time, if there's any medical people here, they'll know, procedure is a fancy word for surgery that's going to mess you up, right? So they put me in, sliced and diced. Now, because it was a lung condition, they can't really give you any pain meds because that lowers your respiratory rate.
Right.
So you're just in your senses, being cut open. Now, again, I'm oblivious to this going in. I'm like, oh, lovely procedure. You know, be done in a few minutes, be at home. This guy comes in, scalpel, cuts, oh my God. Like, sorry if this is too much for anyone listening, but cuts, goes the whole way and puts this tube in. I am traumatized coming out the other side. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is after happening to me? You know? I went to bed normal last night. I watched the Will Ferrell movie. I had a pizza and I woke up and then like you never thought the next day was going to be that, you know? So that took a couple of months to recover from. I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks then and then a couple of months to recover from that. And so that year is passing by. My mind's kind of just rattled. You know, I have no idea what's going on. I'm trying to kind of still make sense of this. I'm like, oh my God, trying to get my weight back up, trying to get healthy again. And 366 days later, right? So, yeah, exactly. So let's start 365 days, first of all. So February 15th, the year after, I was like, whoa, you know, a year since it. Oh my God, I can't believe it's been a year. Thank God. Because what they had said is that there's a high reoccurrence rate in the first year. And I was like, okay, got to get to a year. That's where I got to get to. So we got to the year mark. And I was like, tongue in cheek, let's have some pizza and watch a Will Ferrell movie, right? Yeah, I know. So I woke up the next morning and I was like, no way. No way. I was like, this familiar stabbing feeling. And I was like, I can't believe this has happened again, right? So I didn't even, because my mother she worries so much. I didn't even tell her. I packed the bag first, right? Now, my hand is in here. I literally cannot go up. So I was just reaching into the wardrobe and just pulling stuff into this bag. And I was like, fucking stupid lungs, stupid, So I packed this bag. I went down to her. I said, we got to go to the hospital. It's happened again, right? So same side 2 times in a row in the space of a year and a day. So 2 strikes for any doctors out there that know means you have to go from this horrendous procedure in Limerick to the big procedure up here in Dublin, right? So we come up to St. James's Hospital. There was a surgeon, Ellen McGovern, absolute star. And I mean a star now. She came in, she was so polite, she was so lovely, reassuring. And she's like, we're going to do something called a pleurodesis, right? So do you know when you kind of fall and you graze your hand, right? So that's basically what they had to do to the whole lung.
Right.
So they're going through several different, what do they call them? Keyhole scars areas. And they essentially graze the entire lung the whole way around, it's crazy, right? So they put you out, you're gone. They do this thing. And then the idea is that the lung sticks to the wall after. I could also be bastardizing this description if anyone's listening.
The bro science version.
But this is the bro science version that I got, right? And I never forget waking up. There's a few little complications throughout. So it ended up going on an additional 5 or 6 hours. I can't remember. I remember waking up and just being completely out of it. Like you're whacked out of it in morphine, pain meds, all this stuff. I remember waking up and just being blown out of it. I went to take a breath and it was like I inhaled fire. And I know I sound like I'm being dramatic, but that was like literally the feeling. This lung inflating for the first time since this happened. It's like hot fire going around. It was crazy, right? So that was the 2 on the right side. And they're like, look, the recurrence right now of it happening on the right side is extremely low. Because it's never affected the left side, we don't think it will happen. But there's a chance. And I was like, there's only a chance. I'm in the clear, right? So I left and there was a very long and arduous healing process from that one. There was, I remember leaving St. James with this gigantic Tesco bag of pain meds. I mean, it was gigantic. And they're like, you need to wean off the morphine you've been on. Because I'd been on it for so long. I was in there for 2.5 months, I think it was. Two. Yeah, no, it was a really long time because the lung just wouldn't get to where they wanted it to finish. So then I take all this stuff home and months upon months I'm just in recovery, right? And I'll never forget a couple of days after I came home, this is way back when now, so we had DVDs at the time. No one watches DVDs on Netflix now. But I remember taking this dose of morphine and kind of stared off at the wall, My mother comes in, she goes, oh, yeah, Gar, I'm off to work. I was like, all right, have a good day, see you later, I flicked on the Scrubs DVD and it starts kicking in. I was like, whoa, here we go, I was just kind of staring at the wall, lost in contemplation. And then she walks back in. She goes, how are you feeling? I was like, oh, did you forget something or what's the story, She's like, I'm finished work. So I just stared at this wall in complete contemplation for a whole day, right? It was I was lost in these. And I remember looking at the DVD screen and that little one that bounces around?
Yeah.
The series had finished and everything.
Wow.
I was just so, this is how whacked out of it I was. And then I ended up developing a couple of fears. So one is I first developed insomnia, which sucks. So I'd woken up with collapsed lungs both times. So the way your mind is conditioned, whatever has happened, you start to become a bit fearful of, right? So this has happened both times in my sleep. So the first thing I became fearful of was sleep. So I ended up wrecked throughout every day, trying to get my head right. And it was absolutely crazy. And every night it would just be like this, boom, this switch. And I'm like, can't sleep. Pure adrenaline, fight or flight, whatever you want to call it, cannot sleep. I didn't sleep for months on end. It was absolutely crazy, right? And then when we're talking about this kind of idea of conditioning, the other things I became conditioned or fearful of One was Will Ferrell, because on both times I'd watched a Will Ferrell movie. I remember I was sitting there one time and the Will Ferrell thing was on. I didn't know what it was. We're getting like real uneasy, you know? I'd say I'm the only person to ever suffer with this in the world. I'm like, oh yeah. I remember watching him the night that happened. And I started getting like real uneasy. I'm like, yeah, lads, I'm going to step out there for a few minutes outside. But I had a proper panic attack from watching a Will Ferrell movie. I remember thinking, wow, this is like, the mind is absolutely nuts. Like I had never consciously noticed that, you know, but it had put it in my head of like, well, you know, we know this is irrational, but it did happen after watching Will Ferrell, you know? And then the last thing, which was even more bizarre, was pizza. I was like, is it maybe indigestion is causing too much pressure or something? I was thinking, what could it be? It took me a solid year to get sleeping back, to get my love for Will Ferrell back, who just so happened to be my favorite comedic actor at that time, and to have a slice of pizza again, which was so nuts, right? And then 1 year after that, I remember just waking up one morning, left side, boom, gone. And I had just started training for the first time in my life. I was maybe moving some tens on dumbbells or something. I'd never trained, you know? And just started training. I was like, all right, I'm going to get healthy, make sure this never happens again. I was training maybe 2 or 3 months, woke up with that same pain the opposite side. And I was thinking to myself, I don't believe this. This is insane. And it's you get into these weird spirals of like, why is this happening to me? Do you know, this woe is me kind of narrative in your head of like, there's so many other people. Why is this affecting, you know, my late teens and early 20s? Why me? You know, there's bad people. Why is it, you know, you get into this. But eventually you work yourself out of it and end up having to go to the hospital. But I remember it was this kind of like manic spark of like, no, not anymore. So I went in with this attitude. It was so crazy. I went in with the idea of like, fix me and let me get life going. Like I am sick and tired of this whole life. Let's go. Let's do something. I remember going in and the doctors and nurses were like, Jesus, like this is a different Gar that's here, you know? And I was like, let's get the tube in. Like, what do I have to do? Do I have to walk around to help the lung? Do I have to rest more? What is the thing I need to do? And funnily enough, that was the shortest amount of time. But now, probably no correlation between the two. But there was this thing of like, I have to get up and get going, right? So before I had that last surgery, I remember sending this email. I remember thinking, I'm sick of the way life is right now. Right now, again, all very manic thinking. There's no weighted thinking here. Do you know what I mean? There's no like, maybe I should consider a couple of things. There was none of that. It's like, how do we burst out of the gates the second I'm better? So I remember sending right before I went in for the surgery of like, you know, dear Limerick Institute of Technology, I am dropping out of, I was an electrical engineer at the time, in my third year. I'm dropping out of engineering. Thank you so much for everything. Please remove me from all course materials going forward. Thank you so much, Gar. You know? And we're waking up the opposite side and just thinking, let's go. Let's do this. Let's keep pushing from here. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. But that was enough for me to try and consider a couple of things to begin with, you know? Got back into training. Just was loving training, right? I ended up, I think I told you this before, 47 kilos was the weight I came out of hospital.
Yeah, just about to ask, yeah.
47 kilos, man. And it's like, oh my God, like, I mean, like everything I'm wearing now is like, that's a large, pants is a large. But I had smalls that wouldn't fit me. I had to go shopping in like kids sections and stuff to get something that would fit me in the interim till I got back to my normal size. And that was such a mad thing. And it was like, okay, we're going to train hard. And I had no idea what I was doing in training. I was just, you know, just in flogging myself around. If there was a kind of big guy around, I'd be like, why are you doing that? Do you know what I mean? But the one thing that was killing me was the scar tissue.
Right.
So it's all around the ribs. It's all under the collarbones. They went into the top of the chest, ribs on that side as well. And then through the traps and lower traps on the right side. So couldn't really do rowing movements, couldn't do pressing movements. Overhead was like literally impossible. Like I had even like a worry of going overhead in case I blew out the healing tissue, you know? So it's just training. And then eventually I was like, I like this. Maybe I'll become a trainer. And that's kind of how all of this started. And, you know, over time then picking up clients, and that's where CityGym comes from. Now, I know you asked me one question, and I'm after running off for 15 minutes.
No, that's amazing. It's such a story. Like, I mean, I think you can only truly appreciate where somebody is and what they do when you can understand where they came from. It's one of the main, when I had Jay Farrant,
It was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's actually like one of my favorite episodes, actually the most popular episode as well. But it was, I had obviously had a chance to get to know Jay over the last couple of years, being a member of ABS and later becoming an ABS coach, to realize what a good guy he is. Like, don't get me wrong, Jay's crazy, but I wanted to do that because I wanted people to see where he'd been to kind of help understand who he is and why he's the way he is. I don't just mean in his personality, but his ambition and his vision. And I think that's an important story for you as well, because you had essentially 17 to probably like your 2021, all like marred with this series of collapsed lungs.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. It's like, you can think about like, even if had it just been the one time, would have been fairly obstructive to your, like, just think about it. That's like going through the period of time of like your Debs, starting college, going on the lads' holidays, going out on the piss, trying to chat up girls. And, Gar is like doubled over in pain, like Quasimodo, you know what I mean? Especially then the second time with the scarring they would have had to do around to attach the lung onto whatever way we said it was the bastardized version of it. Like the healing process, and then only for it to then start happening on your left side. I can't imagine I can imagine the mental spiral there, of like, fuck this, that's outrageous to have come through that. But then, as we talked about briefly when we were chatting beforehand, is it probably does explain somewhat the ambition you came out of all that with. You decided like, well, what I'm doing now isn't something I want to do. Screw college, I'm going to set my sights on something bigger and something better. So firstly, like, well done to you for keeping it together. And you did have that moment of levity recently where you were like pressing the 50s.
Oh yeah. It was after we've been chatting through email and I went to train then, and I was doing like just flat dumbbell pressing. I kicked up the 50s, and I'd never really considered any of this, and I started bringing them down, pressing up. Now, it's probably not good to let your mind kind of roam throughout any pressing, any movement at all. But I remember as I was pressing, and you're looking like, oh my God, I have more in each hand than I came out of hospital. And like, it's a crazy thing to happen. I remember putting it down, and like, it's something I hadn't considered. So there's this kind of moment. I know people say like gratitude a lot and stuff like that, but there was actually this genuine moment of gratitude of like, geez, it's been a while, and I've come a long way. You feel very thankful for where you've come from and where you've got to.
Well, I think what's important there though is that it speaks to your character that you are thankful that you were there, because there is a mindset where these things will happen to people, and that becomes an all-consuming part of their identity. I am now the thing that happened to me, and that does happen. So I think it speaks to your character that you use that as those very like traumatic formative years to say, what can I do now to like seize life, take the bull by the horns and get after it. So like, honestly, like genuinely congratulations, because like,
thank you, man.
I don't know, like, because hardship is inevitable. Like, we're all going to face hardship in our lives. And I would always look at things like the gym or powerlifting or competing. It's a voluntary form of hardship. It's not that hard, but it's like we're voluntarily suffering a couple of times a week for the betterment of our life quality. Whereas I think there's things like that happen that can just really like completely send you off the deep end, or can completely knock you off course for years, or potentially the entire time you're going to be alive. But it seems to... I don't know what you were like when you were 17, but it seems that it knocked you actually on a very direct course of success. Because as you said, you made the decision then to become a personal trainer yourself, and then after, which was personal training Limerick, am I right?
That's it, PTL,
and you mentioned it when you said it. I was like, that man's a genius. You're like, what's the first thing people will Google? Personal training Limerick. Man.
There you go. If you have a gym in the city of Limerick, what do you call it?
CityGym Limerick.
CityGym Limerick.
Amazing. Like, it's such like baseline thinking, but so amazing. Actually, this is completely random. I saw a guy made a video the other day, and it shows you how he hired people, Fiverr.
Yeah.
He hired 3 designers on Fiverr. He sent them all the same material, and it was him. He sold sunglasses and sent them the logo, and he said, I want something with the logo and the sunglasses. So it's just him dipping them into orange paint and pulling them back out, and they're covered in the paint. So the first 2 guys, the cheap guy, and then the middle, it was like $15, $30, $60. And they're the first 2 are fine, but the last guy, and this is why you don't go cheap on anything, he reversed the video so they start covered in the paint, and then the reveal is the glasses coming out at the end. I was like,
Oh, that's cool.
that guy did not think linearly. He thought big picture. What are we actually trying to get at? So in the same way, it's almost all he did was reverse the video, and it made it way better. In the same way, CityGym or personal training Limerick or CityGym Limerick, it's simplicity is why it's genius, because you're thinking about the
Too simple. Yeah.
and with that then, so you obviously opening your own business, and I've had several gym owners on here before, Ben Harrison as well, we were having on chatting about owning and opening a gym, James Hanley as well with RevFit. Motivations to open in the gym is one thing, but I know we talked a little bit about it as well, and this is actually something I want to ask you about. CityGym obviously has become well known for being a powerlifting club. It's probably one of the biggest powerlifting clubs in Ireland. But you also still work with the general public. And from your experiences, would I be right in saying it's important to you to maintain that aspect of your business, given what you had to go through to then be able to get fit and healthy the way you are now? I assume that's like a core value for you to be able to provide that service for the general public.
Yeah, man, like it's a lot of my day-to-day work is still one-to-one personal training. I love it. You know, like I have all these guys that I coach, guys and girls online that are in the gym. You know, I send their programs, we talk through things in the gym. But I still do a lot of one-to-ones with people from Limerick City just because I love it. Mm-hmm. It's people that are coming from backgrounds where they've never trained, maybe a bit hesitant to train, and I know the feeling. Mm-hmm. When you walk into a gym with 47 kilos and you're like healing and trying to recover, and people look at you and you look like gaunt. Because like, imagine like, I'm not a tall guy, but I'm not a small guy. Imagine this frame with 47 kilos. It was literally just bone. Like there was nothing else. Do you know what I mean? And trying to lift any weight, you see people kind of like, what is this guy up to, you know? Now, it could have been in a very supportive way, you know, but I did look very gaunt. So I know the feeling of trying to walk into somewhere, trying to do something for the first time, the intimidation that comes along with that, the kind of feelings of being in your own head. And I love being the bridge between someone who feels that way and them being like super hench and strong, like a year or two down the line. So like there's a lot of people I deal with, from people who would like own their own business, and for them, they do get super strong, they get in shape, but they also get some time to themselves. Mm-hmm. I deal with parents who are kind of losing the plot with newborns, but they come in, do a few curls and feel great. Mm-hmm. I even have like a couple of clients who would be on very, I would say very similar, that would actually be throwing a bit of shade at them, but like there's a PT of mine, Rob Sheehan, right? Mm-hmm. Shout out Rob, because I know he'd be listening. But he's a legend. He was the first guy in Ireland to have a double lung and liver transplant.
Wow.
Ireland's first. It was only 2 years ago. Like, absolute legend, man. And like, he comes in and he gets after it. Do you know what I mean? It's like even the first day after that surgery, you have to get out of bed and walk to get the lungs working. Now, when we talk about hardships, having your whole insides rearranged and then having to get up and walk the day after, that's hardship. And that gives me a lot of and that kind of perspective of like, mine was bad, but there is someone who's there's always a bigger fish, right? Mm-hmm. And this guy and he is a beast, man. He comes in, he does powerlifting. I love that. Do you know what I mean? He comes in, gets after it. So like, dealing with Gen Pop for me is still one of the most exciting aspects of my job, for all of those reasons, you know?
So when you opened CityGym, I assume it was to open it as a personal training studio. How did it evolve into a powerlifting club?
Man, so basically when we opened, I worked 51 weeks kind of as, not a subcontractor, but I rented space around town in a couple of different places, in 4 different places to be precise. And one of those was called TriFit, which is now CityGym.
Right.
So there was this girl named Lorraine, she used to own that gym. And I got introduced to her through a friend of mine, Kieran. And he said, Lorraine, it's great. You can rent space. It's good prices. It's a beautiful gym. Like, you know, go in there. So because all of my clients were city centre based, I ended up bringing like, I think it was 34, 35 clients into there, which was amazing, you know? And she just said to me, we're working months and months and months. Everything's going great. And she said to me, Gar, unfortunately, bills are getting too high. I'm going to have to shut up shop. We're done. I was like, oh, fuck, that's a shit. I love this place. Like, I loved TriFit. Do you know what I mean? I love being in there, love the location, everything about it. And I ended up being there for about, it was 11 months. And so that was shit. I had to try and find, where do I bring all these clients to? Do you know, like, do I go to this gym out here? Do I go here? lot of places were saying we're not taking personal training, their clients. And I get it from an insurance perspective, it makes sense. Like, they didn't know me.
Yeah.
That's a lot of clients to bring anywhere. A lot could go wrong. Do you know what I mean? And I remember meeting the landlord one day as I was packing up my desk in what was Twyford at the time. He said to me, it's a shame. He's like, I'm pretty sure the clients that you have were covering all the bills. I was like, no way. You know, I was like, there's no way. So then he's like, do some maths for me here. So I, did maths and showed it to him. I was like, that's kind of like what I'm taking in a week, taking in a month. And he goes, you would just about with that clientele cover every single bill. He goes, now you've no wage, but like that will cover every single bill. Sure, I was manic at the time. I didn't need a wage. Do you know what I mean? I could go crazy. I was like, give me 2 weeks. I'm going on a holiday for 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks to think about it. By the time I had got to the destination for my holiday, we would flown to the States. I'd messaged him and said, I'll take it. And so began CityGym. So we rebranded, got this up and running August 14th, 2014.
Wow.
And at the time, I had my lease with him. And then I had, there was a couple of bits of equipment in there. And he said to me, right, you can pay this. Because I mean, like, I was broke.
Mm-hmm.
I had savings from all the clients that I had. But I mean, like, after I put that into the gym, paying first month up front, deposit, all this stuff, getting new kit in.
Yeah.
After that, then after giving him a lump sum for the equipment that was there, and then we spread the rest. He was actually really good to me. Like, it was unreal. The bits that were left there, there was a couple of spin bikes, a couple of rowers, a couple of barbells. And he's like, look, if you can't pay it all off, give me the lump sum, like everything that you have basically, and we'll spread the rest out over 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. So I ended up getting this gym, had my clients, and then I was like, oh my God, I have a gym.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know where to go from here, right? So it was this big blue room. We had like one kind of like these long racks that had 3 bays in it, right?
Yeah.
We had 20 spin bikes. I don't know what I was up to with that, and 4 rowers. And I was like, okay, like, let's start doing classes. Let's do what every other gym does. And in the meantime, I met like the CityGym OG Arthur Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my man Arthur Lynch. It was unreal. So someone said to me, man, like, you like lifting heavy weight. There's this guy, Arthur Lynch, in UL Gym. Like, you'd probably get along with him because he also lifts weights. I'm like, well, that's kind of a reductionist view, but let's try it out, Ended up getting on with him like a house on fire. And like, Art, he is a legend.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't meet a nicer guy. So he came in and he was like, well, kind of the stuff you're doing, we just call this powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I've actually competed in powerlifting. He's like, no, you haven't. I was like, no, in Eastway Fitness, I competed in powerlifting. It's like, it's this random thing. He's like, go, tell me about that. So there's this place, Eastway Fitness, that was owned by a guy named Blue Shinners, legendary bodybuilder, such a nice guy, a neighbor of mine. And he was the person that gave me like my first fitness job. He let me rent space before anyone else.
Right.
And there's a guy, Shane Brody, that has the IPO.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a Tuesday or Wednesday. He said to me, he goes, I look strong enough, Now, I think he was just being nice to me. I was not strong. He goes, you look strong enough. Do you want to compete the weekend? I was like, yeah, I better max out today just so I know what to do. I entered this competition, man. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But when Art said, oh, we call this powerlifting, I was like, oh, I know about this, So began CityGym Powerlifting with 2 members.
And look where it's gone from there.
So,
Even bringing up Arthur Lynch, like we were talking about it before, and I've mentioned on the podcast before, somebody that like, when I was like, the peripheral flirtation with the sport of powerlifting, without fully knowing what it was, I knew who Arthur Lynch was. When he was like the main man in the Irish PF, one of the heavy hitters in the international team and all that. And then I told you the embarrassing story when I actually formally met him for the first time.
So good.
I will actually eventually reach out and have him on.
Tell it now.
I think I might have already, but I am going to tell it again. Arthur was up for the AGM in ABS in early 2020. So the AGM is where all the Irish PF members get together and vote on motions and things like that. And new committees are voted in. And he had come across the 5 Foot Swords where I used to train. I used to work. He was in training doing a few bits. He was doing a bit of floor pressing and just walked over. I was like, how you doing? You're Ian. Do you mind if I borrow some chalk? And of course, I was starstruck because this was Arthur Lynch. And I tried to make small hi, you're Arthur. Yes. Tried to make small talk with the poor guy. He was to say, yeah, thanks. You know, oh, that's a lot of weight you're lifting there. Fucking 150 kilo floor press. He was probably chilling, like,
and he was chilling. Yeah.
At the time, to me though, I was like, fucking Arthur Lynch. Like, that's what I was saying to you. In the time I've been around, like I've been in pro wrestling, I've met some of the biggest names that were in the WWE back in the early to late 2000s. Meant nothing to me. Met Arthur Lynch.
Starstruck.
Blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. As I mentioned, I was when we were backstage at the Christmas qualifier recently. He was in there handing. I was like, oh my god, it's fucking Arthur Lynch. It's still I don't know what it is.
He still has the star power, man.
I'm gonna be sitting here. If I have him on, I'm just gonna be like, oh my god, I need an Arthur Lynch t-shirt. Actually, I always get a laugh off whenever we're down in CityGym for the Open. There's that like cardboard cutout of him.
I love it, man.
That's around. Yeah, it's so good.
How that has survived since I think that was 2016, and it's somehow he's lost an arm. The cutout now, not the real Arthur. And it's still going. And people come in, they're like, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? It's just such a weird thing to have.
The reputation of him sweeping the platforms or vacuuming the platforms is still a thing. Yeah.
It still goes. Yeah. But like, I mean, like, there are certain things that people know about Arthur. A, he is the nicest human to have ever walked the earth, right? B, he is extremely strong. C, he hates talcs and videos. People know those things about him. If someone is talking, he hates it.
Because he has to hoover.
Because he has to hoover it, man. And he also knows it wrecks to hoover. So he has a love of like mechanical things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he also doesn't like people filming. Now, obviously where powerlifting is gone, we have to get very quickly past that, you know?
Well, I think the filming exists on a bell curve where there's zero filming and then there's like you've probably seen it yourself. Sometimes walking through a gym, you're tiptoeing around like a sea of tripods.
Yes.
You know, like, so I'll occasionally record sets, and all my lifters record sets for check-ins and things like that. But like, I'm a firm believer, bottle of water, phone, good to go. Just lean it up against the bottle of water, it's fine. You know, record one set, you're good. But there are people that, because they're not thinking of, well, I need to record my sets to check execution, bar speed, position, check-ins with my coach, or like, I'm going to make a pretty sweet TikTok out of this.
For sure.
But in saying that, I think it's also good to move with the times, and naturally the visibility of powerlifting has obviously improved in people coming into the sport. So like as your business owner yourself, and for me being a powerlifting coach, those are really good things. So, you
100%.
know, we'll make peace with the video, and even if Arthur won't.
No, like, because there's two sides to this. There's me, and then there's Jay Aesthetics, right?
Yes.
So we have, you know, those little Jordan plates? The only reason we have those in CityGym is to put two of them together and stick the phone on it, because it holds the phone perfectly, right? And I mean perfectly. And Jay kills me all the time. He's like, what are you doing filming stuff on? Like, he also hates Samsungs, right? I'm calling him out here. He loves iPhones, hates Samsungs. What are you doing with the Jordan and the Samsung, man? He's like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And he's got the tripod set up. He's got everything. But like, there are now people. So like, we work with Rascal, right? These people, like, they're making a living.
Yeah.
It's awesome. They go to the gym with their cameras. They shoot these different angles. They get very creative. That wasn't there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Now people are making full livings from going to the gym. I think that's the coolest thing of all time, man.
It's one of the things I feel like, I know even myself, I've said it on this podcast before, it's something I know I miss a beat with, like, because I don't record more. I know I could definitely like do better as an athlete if I filmed more, or even sometimes as a coach. But I think like recording a podcast and pushing all this stuff out, that's enough for me.
You've got it here, man. This is unreal.
This is fine, you know. Actually, incidentally, speaking of your relationship with Arthur, you and him have done some work together outside of powerlifting. What was it you've worked on together?
Oh, is this the NASM?
Yes.
Oh man, that was cool, right? So we went into lockdown. Everything stopped, right? Which is pros and cons to that. You know, you got some time with the family, couldn't go to the gym. There's, you know, pluses and minuses. But in that time, through Sigma Nutrition with Danny, NASM reached out to Dan. They said, you know, we'd like to basically employ your full group, and we're revamping every course we've ever done. And we're starting with these ones here. And we would love to have Sigma Nutrition right through like weight management and obesity, training for Gen Pop, all of these like really cool topics. So myself and Arthur co-authored like training for Gen Pop, which was amazing. Then I got to write practical nutrition strategies for coaches, which was that was a lot of fun, just getting to kind of pick apart like, so I know how to do it, but how do you write this process down? And like, they have these very strict guidelines on how you write. So that was really cool to try learn all these things of like, when one approaches a client, you can't say like when the boys or, you know what I mean? When one approaches a client, the coach has to say, so it's all this different writing style. And then it's double peer reviewed. So it has to be internally and externally reviewed. So Danny from Sigma reviews first. And if he thinks it's good, he'll give you what you have to edit. Then he sends it on to the external reviewer, who's a guy named Brad Dieter. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I know the name. Yeah.
He's like a titan in the industry, right? And he's a little bit harsher with his critique. We won't go into that, but he sends back, this all needs to be edited, this needs to be cited. But that was a fantastic process getting to create all of these courses with the guys. And like we were saying in the emails and before, so the first thing I did when I came out of hospital was I trained with the NASM.
Yeah.
And then all these years later, you get to kind of pay it back, come full circle, and then create this content for new coaches coming into the game. And one of the things that would have been translated over to the course that I did. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, and it's probably pretty cool to know your name is in there somewhere now, you know?
It is. It's in the credits. Yeah,
that's incredible. Yeah. And that is, I suppose, if you're somebody that's like very firmly entrenched in the industry for what it is, you know yourself, the standard to get people into the industry is quite low. You know, like the barrier, and a lot of the information that's taught in personal training courses is quite outdated. So I think it's great that you can be a contributor to pushing the needle more towards higher standards for coaches, better services for the potential clientele, and a better general group think of what we can do to actually help people. Because I think it's one of these things, and it's something we talked about a little bit beforehand, kind of off topic, but it was some people's Instagram pages, other coaches, are almost exclusive about shitting on coaches, other coaches.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, I think it's that like many people get into the industry and they're just citing what they were taught when they were brought in, and it might not necessarily be the best thing, and particularly on language used and what kind of like misinformation or like nocebo style language they might use to individuals. We're trying to like, you know, get more people exercise and not creating fear around exercise, but they're just citing what they have come to understand as the truth. Whereas yourself and Arthur actively contributed to moving the things forward and actually seeing the business progress. I think that's an incredible thing to be able to say you did.
Man, I think so too. It feels really cool. And even to have any kind of group reach out and say, we think we're outdated. Now, NASM, I'm not affiliated with them, I'm not paid by them. But the fact that someone reached out and said, we want to revamp all of our courses, I think that's phenomenal. Because this is a big money machine for them. They're churning out coaches left, right, and center. And this kind of moral or ethical decision of like, well, we're not doing it right. That's very cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we actually change the industry? That's a very cool place to come from, you know?
I think it's good to have the introspection to be able to say, well, it's like anything. I'm sure you probably have this as a business owner. If you were to get like a negative review or negative client feedback, it's easy to instantaneously prop up against all the things you've been told you've done right. But I think it's good to be able to say, what can I learn from? Now, I'm not saying the person is correct. Maybe they're reacting emotionally, maybe they're being unreasonable. But what if there is a grain of truth or a lesson in what they're saying? And I think that takes a degree of maturity and kind of bigger picture. Don't miss the forest for the trees. Maybe there is something they're saying and what they're saying that I can learn from. Yeah. And I think that's probably for the NASM, it probably speaks volumes for them to say that that's the position they found themselves in. They were like, well, what could we actually do to move it better? But speaking then of other things you've involved yourself in, you mentioned already you were one of the key players in bringing Rascal Apparel over to Ireland, which is huge.
Yeah.
And then, tell me how that came about firstly, because that's Omar Esau's brand, am I right?
It's Omar, yeah. Omar is the man, right?
Because this is like, that's like OG fitness YouTuber to me.
Man.
Like Omar, he was, so one of the first person I ever watched on YouTube for fitness was Elliot Hulse.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember Elliot, yeah.
Omar was in an Elliot Hulse video being taught how to deadlift.
That's right, yeah.
And then I start watching Omar as he was on Alan Thrall's channel, Untamed Strength.
Yeah.
And then he does, him and Eric Helms do a podcast, Iron Culture.
That's right.
And then you're fucking working with this guy now. What the fuck is going on? Like,
no, it's super cool, man. Because I was sitting there during 2020. We're in lockdown again, right? And I'm like, okay, this sucks. Mm-hmm. I enjoy working. I enjoy doing things. We're not doing anything, you know? So I was like, right, I wonder what I can do. Mm-hmm. So just kind of sitting down, getting curious, you know. since way back when, I followed a group called De Novo.
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you know De Novo?
I don't know what they do. I've seen that name. Tell me about them.
So De Novo is Ben Esgro, right?
Right. Okay.
And Ben Esgro, the man, legend, right? He changed that to Elemental Formulations when him and Omar hooked up.
Ah, right. Okay.
Right? And that's where Elemental Formulations came from. So I said, I wonder, I need some pre-workout. I wonder if I could send off for a box of this. Try get it at wholesale price. This is just me kind of sitting at home trying to scheme something up, And I was like, and then if the guys were open to it, like if I could sell a box of it, I wonder would they be open to me distributing, like on their behalf. So, I said to them, could I buy a box and, from here, could I distribute for you if it goes well? And Ben got in contact with everyone that had been with EPC before, right? So the European Powerlifting Conference, he got in touch with like Eric Helms, Greg Knuckles, all these guys. And he goes, who is this guy? I've noticed at the bottom of his emails, it's his co-founder of EPC. And I know you've been at that. Thankfully, no one told him I was an ass, right? They all lied. And they said, he's a sound. Yeah, they all lied. They're like, he's a sound fella. Yeah. So Ben got in a call with me and he said, we'd actually like to bring Elemental Formulations to Europe. Mm-hmm. So how would we work this? So we just got chatting about like the what does it practically look like to bring a company into Europe? So I went off, did my homework, we got Elemental Formulations formulated in Ireland, which is very cool, in Wexford. Did this run, this if you look through my Instagram, there's this one of like all of CityGym's covered in boxes. That was Elemental Formulations landing for the first time. I remember looking at the truck being like, oh my God, this is terrifying. Now we got to find space for this. The reality hit home. There's a new company on the block and like we'll be doing this on their behalf, And then I remember one day, because for me, it was a big deal meeting Ben. I was like, oh my God, this is mad. And then one day Ben is like, oh, Omar is joining us. I was like, fuck, this is nuts. There's like two of the guys I watched the whole way coming up in the fitness industry on the same call, And while chatting with Omar, he's like, yeah, we might, maybe we'll look at doing Rascal. I was sure. Now in my head, I'm like, oh my God, will we be able for this? This is so much work that we're taking on and it's so cool. So we put all these like procedures and plans in place. And when Rascal hit, it just hit the ground running.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was fantastic, man. And just on the legendary status of those two guys, we went to Sheffield this year. And we were outside and we had what we called the Rascal Block Party, right? So outside the Sheffield Town Hall where everyone competed, right next to it, we just ended up drinking bottles of Absolute Vodka on the street that Omar just kept buying for the crowd there. So like Don Omar was feeding the streets,
Yeah.
And it was so cool because everyone came up to him. And I mean, everyone that you can imagine, all the competitors came up to him. They're like, I started powerlifting because of your content. And they're like, oh shit, this is Ben Esgro. I'm like, this is mad. These two like legends of the industry, And it's been really great getting to work with these two guys. Like this is, never did I think opening CityGym, watching these YouTube videos, all these years later, would I be drinking in Sheffield, of all places, on the street with these two guys? It's mad to see how far it's come,
I suppose it kind of speaks to like the fitness industry, as big as it is, powerlifting in and of itself is still quite a niche community. And you're only ever a few contacts away from being able to reach almost anybody. And I think because like that, like there was most people in lockdown were just, sitting in twiddling their thumbs watching Netflix and getting chubby. You know what I mean? I know that's, I did exactly that, except I just trained because I had a rack in my living room.
Brilliant.
But, and like I kept in touch with my clients and things like that, but you were out there scheming and making moves, man. That's incredible. Yeah.
Because I was thinking, I was like, man, this is, I still think about it quite often that like someone took my business from me.
Yes.
And that I've never had, we'll say since all those times in hospital, I've never had anxiety like that of like someone took the thing I created and created a law and said, you're not allowed go here or do anything with it. Now, obviously we still had all the online presence, which was great. Same as yourself, we're still coaching. But when you run a gym day today and like you go around putting fires out all day, metaphorical fires now, not always, mainly metaphorical fires, but you go around doing this all day and you run a facility, it's weird to go home.
Yeah.
And as I said, plus and minus, I absolutely adored that time with my family. My two kids, like really pivotal ages, like getting to be with them during those years, getting time with my wife, sit down and watch stuff. We never have that time. That was cool. But also in the back of my head, I was like, okay, so like retail is allowed to stay open. facilities that do online shopping are allowed to stay open. And I just so happen to have these two amazing contacts now. No one's taking this from me again.
Yeah.
We'll find a way to keep this open. We'll work around the rules that are in place. Let's do something cool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but I think that's kind of an interesting way to think about it, because I've kind of hit that same thing. Like, I remember I was very frustrated during that period of time, not being able to run my business the way I wanted to. I like working with people in person. I like I like having big, long, busy days. I don't want to sit in the house all day. Like, don't get me wrong. There was a certain novelty to it for a week or two. And, it was nice being able to take things a little bit slower. But after a while, you're like, I need stuff to be happening now. I need a bit of action. I need to make, so it's great to see that you were like, well, now, what way can I get around this? So that's actually pretty awesome. Like, but you touched off it briefly, and I do want to talk a little bit more about Rascal and Elemental Formulations, but you mentioned the EPC.
Yeah.
So again, to kind of just I like that you dropped that nugget in there for me to pick back up.
Yeah.
So the European Powerlifting Conference.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
This was they've been three of my favorite things that we've done. EPC 17, 18 and 19, the years respectively. And we did Limerick, Dublin and then London. It was a lot of fun. So somewhere around the end of 2016, I was sitting with Danny Lennon, right? Mm-hmm. And we're talking about CityGym was built initially on the idea of education. So we've always had people in, like we had the first month after we opened, we actually had Danny Lennon in. That's how I know him. I listened to his podcast. It had a different name at the time. It just changed to Sigma. That was it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need to get this guy in. Mm-hmm. This is unreal information. So we ran a seminar for like 30 or 35 people. And that's how myself and Dan got to know each other. Then we had like Greg Knuckles. Then we had like Brett Gibbs, who was the 83 world champ at the time. Yep. We had Josh Hancott, who was the junior 74 champ at that time. Like every year, we would just have all these people over. And I said to Dan, I was like, how do we do it bigger? And it was just this mindset of like, how do we always do something that's that little bit more? Do you know what I mean? And then I was like, well, who do you want? And then we're like, well, this person be cool. This person be cool, This person, like, we don't know them, but we like the stuff they're putting out as of late. Like, they're just emerging on the scene or whatever. And then we're like, could we do some like mega seminar? We didn't know what to call it. Mm. And then we're like, no, it's more of a conference. So then we decided on like what it was going to look like. So it was going to be this like theater style lecture room. Mm-hmm. So tiered seating all the way down, someone at the front. And we're going to go completely from a theoretical side of powerlifting. Because like all the kind of more pragmatic stuff was out, or what we felt was out there at the time. But no one was talking about what does like planning a year of nutrition look like? Mm-hmm. What does a weight cut look like? What is good information for programming? Like are we just, I remember at the time some of the things that were like really popular, like 531 and Shaiko and stuff like this. People were crazy about these things, And we're like, okay, but is there like fundamental principles that underpin all of these things? And these are the guys that know about this. So we brought all like our first 6 over, which was incredible. So that was 2017. And I think we got, I'm pretty sure it's 98 exactly. For our first year, we're like, holy shit, people want this. Mm-hmm. This is crazy. Like, so we have 6 speakers over. We have these people that somehow came along, terrible marketers, we somehow got these people to come along. And we're like, yeah, we'll do it again next year. So then we took the advice of everyone that was there. EPC 18, we had 11 speakers. Mm-hmm. We brought it to, I think it was 120 or 130. That one I'm unsure about. And we're like, oh, we're getting bigger again, And then Danny left for a while. So like he is still the co-founder. He still runs everything. But for 2019, Danny was traveling. He was the digital nomad. He was off in Asia, living the life, So myself and the guys from CityGym, we all ran this together in 2019 in London. 3 of the best years ever, man. Mm. Like, I mean, like I've never learned as much, enjoyed things as much. Now, the stress of them is astronomical. And I mean, like, to a level that I'd never felt. And I remember we were on a break in 2019. This will give you an example of how tuned in. It was too tuned in, right? Mm-hmm. We were on a break in 2019. And Rob Maloney, one of the coaches that was with us before, he says to me, he's like, "Gar, we're going out for lunch. You coming?" So the room was empty. Everyone was on lunch. I was like, I'm just going to stay here, man, and I'm going to look after the thing. And I remember just being completely zoned out of it. And he goes, what thing? I was like, just give me an hour, will you? Because it had all hit me. Like, this was the break of the Sunday of day 2. We're finishing up soon. It went well. And it was that thing of like, just wash over and was like, oh, thank God, you know? But that's something we're hoping to bring back next year.
That was what I was just about to ask, because it sounds incredible. Now, obviously, understandable why there was none in 2020 and 2021.
For sure.
But like, I think particularly with how powerlifting has looked since, you know, COVID or lockdowns at least have become a thing of the past. Like, I think, Jesus, you'd be doing well to run one now. So like, what would the future of that look like if it was to come back? Now, obviously, I know there's probably some hypothetical discussions going on, but like, even from your own standpoint, what would you like it to be? What would it look like? Is it the same thing, theater-based speakers?
So it's again, we take feedback from those who've been there very seriously. And I was actually chatting with Greg Knuckles the other day, and he said, man, I'd love to do it again.
Yeah.
He's like, I would absolutely, he's like, if I can bring anyone, if I can do anything, like, let's get this back up and running. He's like, it's one of my favorite things in the year, which is lovely to hear. I'd spoke with a few other people that like have been regulars at it, and they were like, do it, man. Like, pull the trigger, let's do this thing. So a lot of these guys, they were like, we love the layout, but maybe for one day. And they're like, would you ever consider? And then Danny, who's back in on the project, said, he's like, I think this is a good idea as well, the Sunday, to do some form of practical gym thing. And he's like, I know we initially did this to get away from that concept. He goes, but I think with all the people we've brought over, especially because we always try to bring like incredible athletes and coaches.
Yeah.
So it's not just the theory of it, but like we had like Matt Gary there, for example, and he did like a meet day thing. It was amazing. We had Bryce Lewis run LS McLean through a squat demo. Like, these are all like legends again. Do you know what I mean? And then he was like, rather than doing that on this stage, this lecture stage, why don't we actually bring that into a gym or into somewhere where people can actually do not personal training, but some form of like in-person critique with these people.
So this is actually something I'm not sure, like, I assume you know who Barbell Medicine are.
Oh yeah.
So when they do their seminars where they travel all over the States, they're actually going to be in Germany, I think, in 2024.
Are you bringing this up? Do you know?
No.
They're coming to us.
No way.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was chatting, that's why I thought you brought it up. I was I see where you're going with this.
I am actually like, I'm a big fan of Jordan Feigenbaum and Austin Baraki. I consume a lot of their content, a lot of where I got like my fundamentals and understanding, like, you know, evidence-based training and like, you know, removing barriers to participation and like that kind of like this expansive, like the deep iceberg of fitness industry and strength training. I started watching Alan Thrall's videos, and then he had like them on, or he hosted a seminar for them. So I start watching all their content, and then I've been watching how they run their seminars, where they do like the talk on a certain topic, then they do a Q&A, and then they do platform coaching where there'd be them and 2 other coaches going around critiquing people in racks or giving them feedback. So I was literally just about to mention that. No, I had no idea. That's like,
because
that's mind blowing for me.
There you go. Yeah, because it's they contacted me 4 or 5 months ago, and they're like, we're coming to Europe. We had Jordan at EPC 19 in London. It was unreal. Like, he is just a fountain of knowledge. It's incredible. And he blew it out of the water, and we got to know each other quite well. Yeah. And Claire that works there, was it Claire messaged me? No, Leah, sorry, messaged me. And so, you know, Jordan said he loved what you guys did with EPC, loves the idea of CityGym. Could we do one seminar there in September? And then we're going to do one other one, probably Germany or France. So obviously it's been decided Germany.
That I've seen, because almost every time he posts a Q&A, I'll ask when he is coming to Europe.
Okay.
Because for the majority of last year in 2022, they were almost exclusively stateside.
That's right.
So I think it was either Germany, Berlin, somewhere around that range. So I was like, all right, I'm going to plan a holiday next year.
Yeah.
But
a holiday to Limerick.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like, because they're a group of people that I would, incidentally, like, I will also probably, this is very selfish me putting this out there, I'm going to look at your guests and see who I can poach to get on a podcast as well.
100%, man.
You know, like,
100%,
oh, man,
that's
outrageous. Yeah.
Oh. They're a great group, man. Yeah. And they contact the second weekend in September. The whole crew is coming.
Do you know, actually, can I actually tell you something crazy?
Go on, yeah.
I was asked when I started working with Dan here, we were having a chat about like who would be like your like ideal guests, And like I was trying to pick someone outside fitness and someone inside fitness. So outside fitness, I was saying somebody like Jordan Peterson or something like that, some big figure to have like a big, deep philosophical conversation with. But in fitness, it was Jordan Feigem and Austin Brocky.
Oh, wow.
So that's it. You're like,
here's the hookup.
Yeah.
We get it hooked up, man.
That's amazing. Whew,
he'd be in Limerick. I mean, this isn't too far.
Man, like we can make it work. Like I can make shit work. I'll talk to you about that after. That's incredible.
Yeah, we're just organising this on a podcast.
So this is something that's going to be happening though.
That's
I know you probably didn't mean to confirm that on this podcast.
No, but like it's something that's been in the works for a while. We have the outline. We have who we'd love to see as guests.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't hard confirmed anyone. We've just floated the idea to our regulars, to the new people, and they were like, "Oh, if it was like these dates, we could consider it, or if it's these dates, we consider it." So now it's the ever fun activity of trying to line up all these really cool people's schedules. But like, okay, we've got most of them on this time. Like this is good enough. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's I suppose that's the nitty gritty stuff. The people that are going to attend don't need to think about it. They just need to show up and have a fantastic
show up
day.
and have a great time. Yeah.
It's like organizing anything. It's like even with these, like I was talking to you about, any time like somebody be like, oh, you need to get this person on, you need to get that person on. It's like, motherfucker, I'm trying. Like people have schedules, you know what I mean? And I don't just mean me and the guest. Dan has a schedule. There's other people that record podcasts.
Yeah.
And I think it's the coordination of everything that people, it doesn't matter. Again, ultimately it all doesn't matter, because when it goes well, it's like it was all worth it. But like you said, when you were running it, it's the stress can get so high just trying to make all these different pieces move. Like even when we're doing like the ab series, like there's so many moving parts to make it as good as it is, but then it happens and it goes seamless and you're like, amazing. That's exactly what we wanted.
That's where it gets you, man, right? So you have this cycle of like, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be unreal. Then the work hits and you're like, oh my God, this isn't unreal. But then the opposite side, that feeling when you're like, all of these people came, had a great time, these guests had a good time. Everyone left a little bit more knowledgeable. These guys have new contact. Like it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And you leave it going, that was well worth it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like even like on a much smaller scale, it's one of the things I have here. Like if I'm having a guest on who I've never really had a chance to formally chat to in any real way. Like a good example is Melvin, when I had Melvin on.
What a man.
What a great guy.
What a man.
Like, but
what a great guy.
Melvin and I had only ever been like, hey man, what's up? Like, you know, like at meets. So when I sat down here and chatted with him, it's like, I love this guy.
Yeah.
I love this guy. Like, and even Dan was saying, he's like, I thought you two were like best pals. I guess we are now. Like, you know, yeah, like and it's one of the things I love about this podcast is being able to actually like corner people for a while and make them talk to me. And then I make friends with them. And
it's an ominous view of it. Corner them, you have to talk to me.
Yeah. We will become friends. It's inevitable. It was, I actually had it when I had Adam Phillips on the first time. He's like, man, like I feel like I properly know you now. Like, you know, and I was like, yeah, for sure. Because it is just essentially like a nice conversation over the course of whatever time. Like, my mind is still blown about this, the European Powerlifting Conference. That's blown my mind. I'm so happy. Like,
it's so cool, you know? And like, as we were saying, 2020, for obvious reasons, we actually had everyone confirmed for that. We had to obviously cancel. Now, thank God we hadn't put tickets out yet. 21, a lot of travel restrictions. We're like, let's hold off just to be sure. Then the end of 21, we still... Like, I think everyone would agree, we still weren't out of it.
No. I would say we only really kind of fully came out of it like April, May 2022. Really.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And there were still even some lagging effects, like very minute, but they were there. Do you know what I mean? So in 21, like we had to make that decision, like, do we do this or not? We thought about it and we're like, if anything were to happen. And like, because you just don't want to, you know, if everyone buys tickets and you refund them, no big deal. If... you know, everyone sets their schedule to come, it doesn't happen, no big deal. But if you piss everyone off when it gets too close, that you've ruined a good thing for yourself and everyone else. And you know, it's hard to claw that back of like, I know it was the government's fault. Please don't blame us. It's hard to get that across. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. And I think you made the right choice, because it's better to leave people wanting more than to keep promising something and not being able to deliver it.
Exactly.
despite the reasons, ultimately the bottom line will be you didn't deliver.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's the same with anything. Like it's like you're a coach and a trainer yourself. You could, like, if something terrible happens at home and you need to cancel a session, a client's going to understand. If you do it 2 or 3 times, it doesn't matter if your cat was run over, your kid broke their arm, or your house collapsed. Eventually, if you cancel enough sessions, they're going to go, look, I'm going to
leave it
else,
off.
you know?
Yeah.
And very understandable. Like, understandable why you're doing your thing, but again, they're just going to go, well, I can just get this same service somewhere else. So I can totally get that from a business standpoint. Sure, in isolation, all those things aren't a big deal, but they compound to the point where either the customers are going to stop coming back or the speakers are going to stop coming over. So, and I think it's one thing a lot of people don't get about Ireland. Everything to Ireland is a flight. You know what I mean? There's
everything.
So to get people from Europe, the States, Canada, wherever it might be, it is always going to be a lot of coordinating travel. So yeah, I totally get that. But yeah, man, that makes me really, really excited. Like, so we've touched on a good few things. We kind of breezed over that you're involved with Sigma Nutrition as well, which I suppose is like a big thing to understand as well. Like that's another piece of the puzzle that makes up Gar. But let me just ask, and I think this is probably one of the main reasons people have clicked in to listen. When last I had you on the podcast, it was part of the panel for USAPL Ireland with Jay Farrant and Ian Benson. I have done a YouTube Zoom interview with Wade Johnson. So this is finally, I get to ask you all about the new federation coming to Ireland as part of USA Powerlifting. But I think what most people don't fully know is that you were actually the one that formalized this and established that relationship. And I assume that was true speaking with Omar, Rascal, Elemental Formulations. That's how you got talking to Wade. Am I right in saying that?
It actually came about. Because it actually wasn't through the guys, believe it or not.
Okay.
It actually came about. I was just kind of like, just looking at the landscape of powerlifting, kind of abroad. And, you know, people were giving me stories back from when they traveled to this and stories about kind of how they were being treated, the direction of what others want powerlifting to be.
Yeah.
And I think this is the big point to hit home with, is that I just had an idea of where I would like to see powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not this kind of, I hate everyone else, so I'm going to do this. And I know it's easy to kind of interpret as that, but I thought, okay, the IPF want to go in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of people will enjoy that style of powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
But when I looked at kind of USAPL, and I saw that they were branching out, and they were quite aggressively putting stuff up in their stories of like, we are branching out. Are there any nations looking to do this? And I was looking at this consistently, kind of caught my eye a few times, you know? And I looked at the way the IPF were moving. And again, no shade on them. They have a clear vision of what they want powerlifting to be. Awesome. You go do that, and best of luck with it. And I mean that like respectfully, you know.
For sure.
More power to you. But then I got chatting. I saw there was an email address for Wade. So I said, it won't hurt to reach out. You know, I just reach out to him and say, hey, man, you know, can you give me more info on this? You know, and he's like, sure. You know, he's like, what about we just jump on a call and talk about it? So I chatted with Wade and another girl, Joanne Craig.
Mm-hmm.
We just had this great chat. And they were like, this is what we view powerlifting as.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's cool. That is really, really cool. And it's, you know, it's loud, it's in your face. It's it was the opposite to what I was viewing the internationals as over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I would hope powerlifting could go. So again, it was with no shade ever. At no point was it, I'm going to take the dagger out and stab someone in the back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this looks pretty. I'm going to give this a try and let's see where this goes. And it just so happens then that Jay and Ian got in touch and were like, man, this looks pretty cool. Like, what would you think of like all three of us doing this together? Which was such a huge relief because it's like, oh my God, I have bitten off way more than I can chew, you know? But like the three of us together, we get along great. We have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And for Irish powerlifting, I think that this will be great crack.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I think that this will be a lot of fun. And kind of what we were talking about of this like divide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find this quite interesting of like the Irish PF and USAPL. From my perspective, there is no bad blood.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't me, because I just want to be really clear about this, right? Because oftentimes when someone makes a move, we kind of project in what we think they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, what Gar is saying in his head now, fuck them. Do you know what I mean? It's not that. It's not that at all. I can curse, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've said
God.
motherfucker on here like 3 times. Yeah, don't worry.
But you know, it wasn't that at all. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was certain things that, you know, on the last podcast I brought up, which have been infamously brought up in my face a few times, been like, oh yeah, Gar's toilets. That is now a running joke. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There is no shade with the Irish PF. That is a good group of people doing a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
As we said, me and you were born at the Christmas Clash.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I'm going to be there in January.
Mm-hmm.
I get along with these people are my friends. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you actually said that when we were chatting. You were listing off all the people in the Irish, like you were mentioning Tracy and Jane and Ali, all these people you have so much time for. Like,
yeah.
I think that's a very important thing as well, because sometimes when people are listening, they have a difficult time. You've specified now Irish PF and IPF, but when you were talking about the direction the IPF are going, we're talking about International Powerlifting Federation, the big governing body. And we're talking a local level. These are the people we see at every meet, we train with, we compete with, we help set up, that we coach, that we help set up meets with. You know, these are the people that like referee us, that we spot for, that we load for, that we chalk their backs, we talc their legs. These are, we're boots on the ground. We're all in this together. So I completely empathize with that. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand that when we talk about this, and it's very easy for people that are maybe removed from both sides of the sphere here, whether they're lifting in the Irish PF or they don't lift at all, and they're just posting on Instagram or I don't know what people post on anymore, Facebook. But the point is that I get they can pontificate, and like you said, they're going to project, oh, this is what Gar's thinking, or this is what the Irish PF are thinking. The reality is, as we've definitely talked about over the last little while, you're quite ambitious and driven to get a lot of different things off the ground. You're trying to make a lot of projects run. I would look at it as you are incentivized to provide more competitions in a market that is definitely booming and has the space for more competitions.
Yeah.
The Irish PF themselves have recognized this. They ran 4 opens in 2023. They've 7 opens in 2024. They know themselves that there's more opportunities for lifters. So you're just, again, where there is demand, you would be a fool to not meet the demand. Now, like you mentioned when we talked about the panel podcast, some of the motivations for why yourself, Ian, and Jane might move away from the Irish PF. I think there are motivations there that people could look at, like from to try and like dig in through the dirt and try and like create a bit of gossip out of. But the practicality is that the Irish PF is primarily volunteer based. This by you 3 guys being here, being able to run this naturally, and we talked about it on the panel, there's a financial incentive. You get to run it here where the meets are going to be hyper successful. I've seen some of the venues that are planned. Holy shit, they look phenomenal. And like you said, it's a whole different flavor of the same thing. If the Irish PF follows, let's say, the IPF direction and moves more towards IOC, and this is kind of more like the rambunctious crazy group, that's fantastic. They're both 2 high standard competitions. And this is what I say to most people, for practically, the 90% of lifters, this will make no difference to you. At a regional level, you can essentially lift anywhere, right? It only really affects those people. In international selection, that's a very small group of people when we really look at how many people are actually lifting. So really, it's actually only a net positive. But I've said this a couple of times on the podcast. I think by having, say, like somebody like Jay or yourself or Ian come away from the Irish PF, that has created opportunities for other people to come in, like we saw at the Christmas qualifier. What a fantastic setup. Those guys did a fantastic job, and I'm really happy to see that. And that's why I'm excited now for February to see what USAPL presents at the warehouse. And I'd imagine that's kind of a big motivator for you guys. Here's the thing that you can make your own. Like, I mean, I think Jay has kind of talked about it to me a little bit, but like Wade and the guys in the US, they want like a minimum standard, but you can be quite creative with what you want.
For sure.
So what have your interactions with like the likes of Wade and all been like since, now that you've got the first couple of meets planned? Like, again, when I talked to Wade, super cool guy.
He's really cool, man.
Really, like, we were on the call, I think, for about an hour and a half actually recording, but we talked about 30 minutes before and about an hour after.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was showing me like his, he has like a whole room in his house, just whiskey.
The whiskey room. Man, it was like the first thing he showed me as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking, he's like, you know how to get me hooked in here.
Yeah.
He was like, oh yeah, Gar, let's talk about USAPL, but like, let's first of all look at all this whiskey. I was like, oh, he's got me. Yeah. He's got me, you know?
Like, super cool, personable guy. He was like, you know, very, very excited about what's going to be happening with the Euro Tour, very excited about like USAPL Ireland kicking off. But like, what has the whole process been like for you guys since initially reaching out, bringing it here, and then that was like 2022, I believe your initial conversation happened, and then now the ball's gotten kicked quite far. Like, he's really rolling now, and we're only like by the time this goes out, a couple of weeks out from the first meet.
Sure.
What's the process been like?
It's been really cool, man. Really cool. So again, it's everyone has their own approach to things, but dealing with Wade and Joanne, they're like, we know you guys have run comps. we know you don't need to have your hand held throughout the entire thing. All you need to do is go sanction the meet. For like, you need to do like these courses first, and you need to sanction the meet. And then from there, follow these guidelines, and you've got yourself a USAPL camp. They have full faith in us, full trust in us, and it's lovely to have that. There's no kind of overbearing things. They literally just send me emails saying, just checking in. Just those 3 words. I'm like, oh, hey, you know, so this week we did this, this, and this. You know, Ian did this, Jay did this. Unreal. Like, you know, we've got this venue. Here's the link to it. And they just write back, awesome. So it's really laid back because they know it's in good hands here. Yeah. They know that we won't tarnish the name or wreck something in their name. And they have a lot of, one thing I absolutely love is they have their boundaries outlined very clear. This is how you run a comp, and you don't go outside of that. And if you understand that, we leave you alone to do your thing. And everyone will buy membership from us, and you guys, you know, you'll get the money in from that comp, run a fantastic comp, pay the volunteers, and have an amazing time. That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Do you know what I mean?
And I assume everything within those boundaries they've set kind of match up very, very much with what you guys want for meets anyway. So like their standards are pretty much exactly where you want them to be. And like I said, I've gotten a chance, obviously I work with Jay, I get to talk to him a good bit, but I've talked to Ian a good bit about it as well. And I couldn't think of 3 better people to be behind the wheel of this because like, obviously 3 hyper ambitious people, like sure, yourself and Ian both running big gyms down in Limerick.
Yeah,
I think
fantastic.
That's really interesting. Actually, incidentally, what's that been like? Because I know I chatted with him. He was back on this podcast back in like February.
Yeah.
And I remember he talked a lot about that and like trying to like unify Irish Powerlifting a bit more because it was very much a case of like, I think one of his guys, it was either Kyron or Sean, walked in a CityGym t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you can't wear that. And he was like, why not? And he's like, I don't know. Why can't you?
Yeah, why can't
you? And then
you?
everyone just start training with each other.
Yeah.
And it's been cool, like, you know, and I think that's pretty sweet. I think it's amazing that 2 big powerlifting clubs exist so close together and it's fine.
It's mad.
And everyone gets on.
It's mad. Because like, I remember like the first time I saw Ian set up, I was like, like, you know, I perceived it as a threat right out of the game. Like, oh, that's very close. It is powerlifting. Ian's a great powerlifter. But then he put a brilliant phrase on it. Because we never addressed it. We just called it vegan beef. It's not real beef. Do you know what I mean? I love that phrase, you know? And then when we started talking, it was like, oh, we're probably like the only 2 gym owners in Limerick that perfectly understand one another. This is pretty cool. And then we started training with one another and it's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is probably how it should have been the whole time.
For sure.
But we just didn't address it. And then after we addressed it, like he was at the Christmas party only whatever it was, 2 weeks ago. 2 of us having Guinness together, having shots. It's brilliant. Do you know what I mean?
Man, I love Ian. Like, I have so much time for him.
He's a legend, man. Yeah. He is a legend.
Like, I even know, because like Jay has said that a lot as well. Like, he talks about like, you know, Abs and CityGym as like frenemies. But he loves the CityGym lads. Like, man. And I love that that's because, like, don't get me wrong. I think from speaking, I had Beck Phillips on recently. He lives.
Yeah. What a man.
Super interesting guy. Like, you know, but I love his insights into what lifting culture is like in the UK versus Ireland. And that was very eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize like club culture doesn't really exist in a lot of other places. Like,
no.
And I think that's one thing we have here. And I would put a lot of it, I don't know if I said it on the episode, but like we have obviously such a strong sense of like field sports where everything's teams. I love that we've kept that in a sport like where, fair enough, you're the only one on the platform, but everyone that wears your colours is shouting for you.
Yeah.
Your whole crew is in the tunnel waiting for you, you know? And I love that we have that. I love that CityGym is black and red. I love that Abs is gold and black. I love Urban have their own particular brand. I love that the Odyssey have their own particular brand. Like, and I think it's cool that there's like, as much as we all lift together and we're all actually mates, also fuck you and I'm going to outlift you, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Like I coming into the Christmas qualifier, I was messaging me, Matthew, Henry and Beck were having a bit of banter, like, so I'd message Matthew and be like, man, I'm actually really excited to see you back. Like, it's great that you're coming back to, because he was gone for a while. And Matthew would be somebody like I'd admire quite a bit. Like, be like Matthew Keane, Arthur, Damien Nam, all these guys that are like super, super amazing lifters that like are way stronger than me, you know. But like, I'm like, oh, you know, it's great that we're going to be on the same platform. And I'm glad you've, like, because you had a couple of injuries, I'm glad you've overcome your injuries. I'm excited to see you back, but also fuck you and I'm going to outlift you, you know.
For sure.
Now, he outlifted me, but still.
Yeah. No, but man, like this concept like healthy aggression.
Oh,
right?
100%, yeah.
Not rage, right? Because rage is like literally like, fuck you. Do you know, like it's really serious. Like this idea of healthy aggression of like, I see this person, I know him and like him, but they're still my competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And the two of us can push one another to a different height.
Yeah.
And like, I remember way back when all this stuff first started, like the two big clubs at the time were CityGym and Abs.
Yeah.
I would say, now I don't know if Jay would agree with me, but I would say the reason that we've grown to such big heights is because of one another and because of this kind of frenemy thing, or as he eloquently put it one night, we are the Luke Skywalker to his Darth Vader, which I think is very fitting. I've always kept that one in my head, you know?
I think he would 100% agree that both clubs have done better because the other club exists.
For sure. For sure. And that's a good thing. And now, possibly I'll get some slap back in this, but I do think the Irish PF and USAPL will do the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be animosity there.
No.
Well, I hope not. No. It won't be from my side anyway.
Not on a practical
level.
Yeah,
I do think that like there will be competitiveness between them in a good way. And even seeing things like the Irish PF put on so many more comps, I'm like, oh, I like that. There's a good push there. And that's for us, we're like, okay, can we push a little bit more? And like it's like, it is healthy aggression of like, no, you're trying to step on our toes. We're going to do this. I love that.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Let me give you something like observationally. Like my last few meets have all been with the Irish PF, and that was actually born out of, I used to lift I've lifted since the first AB series, the very, very first one Jay ran in March 2019. That was my first meet. And I lifted AB series 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, took a break at 8, lifted at AB series 9. And then all my lifters, like, all start doing the AB series. It became like impossible to have my own meet now I know I've seen Ian do it and he does it quite well, but I was like, if I want to keep pushing forwards here into something bigger, I'm going to have to like maybe like look at lifting somewhere else. So the only other show in town at the time was the Irish PF. I lifted at Last Chance 2022. Then I got invited to Nationals. Then I lifted at Western Euros this year.
Yeah.
And then Christmas qualifier. And I've had a great time at every single one of those meets. Yeah. And it gave me a platform to lift on without having to worry about, 14 other people lifting on the same day. So, but I think it's great now to see that coming into the new year, I have now like I said to you already, I have I think 8 or 9 lifters lifting at USAPL. Yeah. I have 5 lifters going down to Galway in January to lift for Irish PF. Unreal. I have another probably 10 or 11 doing AB series in April. And for me, that's amazing because it shows the health of my coaching business, shows the health of the sport, the enthusiasm for the sport. All my lifters are doing fantastically. And they're all so excited there's more platforms.
Love it, man.
And I think it's the case of, as somebody who's kind of firmly like, I'm a member of ABS. So I'm a big part of the series, like presenting and commentating and things like that. I lift in the Irish PF, and I want to have a big role in the USAPL as well. Yeah. I'm very greedy,
You're dead right.
And I think you can empathize with
that. Dead right. The ambition.
So I can see it as, because, like I mentioned, because you guys are now reorientating your resources towards this new federation. Like I said, Christmas qualifier has shown that with the vacuum created, new people have stepped in. I know Ken from Ken
killed him, man.
Nagsagwe, I believe I'm getting his name right there. He was key player in that setup. Yeah. And man, what a job he did. That's what I mean. I love that idea. I love that they can say, oh, fuck, USAPL Ireland killed it at that meet. What can we do to level up now at the next one? And even if you go through the calendar for next year and you look at some of it, there's a lot of new venues. Yeah. They're branching out. And like some of that's born out of necessity, but like, I believe it's the Marina Market in Cork for Junior Nationals, Masters Nationals. Man. That's a good venue, man. Like, I love that we're seeing the sport get this like kick up the arse from all sides. And I don't think it's the Irish PF needed to kick up the arse necessarily. I think it's that as things have been pushed on, the standards have come up and up and up. We used to all be happy just knowing we had more than 2 racks in the warm-up room. Now it's like people want for the bigger, like an open meet being run in the gym, I'm fine with. But like, these bigger national level meets and, these big invitation only meets, seeing those branching out into these bigger venues, presenting the sport and the athletes in a way they deserve to be presented is phenomenal to me. And I love that we're here to see it all happen.
Man, we get to sit back and watch the whole thing unfold. Like, it's going to be a mad year next year. Yeah.
I would love, like, and I think I've actually said this. I think I said it when I had Adam and Connor on. That's like a blur to me because it was after I lifted that day. But I would love to see, like, let's imagine we have a world where Article 14 doesn't exist and we got to see, like, the best, like, the best, like the top 10 lifters in USAPL Ireland across all these weight classes, and the top lifters in the Irish PF across all these weight classes. And we had like this cross promotion one-off event.
It'd be so cool, man.
It'd be like, I don't know if you were ever a pro wrestling fan, but it'd be like the WWF versus WCW. Like,
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I love, like, why? And I think when sports gets in its own way and prevents those things from happening, all we do is limit the growth. And that's ultimately what we want.
But, it's what we want.
Fair.
Do you get me? And that was one of the issues. When I say they're going in a certain direction, that is one of the things of like, we have our cake now, and we're going to put this big boundary around it, and no one else is allowed to do it.
Yeah.
And then if you look at things like buy-in, right, for companies, it's phenomenal. So you kind of create these monopolies, and people are like, we're happy with this now. Now, for the athlete's perspective, it is great most of the time. But I don't think if you, and it's just a personal thing. Like, this is not throwing shade at anyone again. I think if you compete somewhere and you pay for that comp and you're done, you should be allowed to go somewhere else if it is drug tested to the same standard. I mean, that's just a personal thing of mine. Maybe it's just my upbringing. Maybe I'm just a bit rambunctious. Do you know what I mean?
No,
want to fight the power, you know?
No, I completely agree. I think unless you're like a professional athlete signed to a contract where you're getting paid a salary,
Exactly.
I don't really think a governing body. Now, look, right, in saying that, I could say like a governing body shouldn't be able to tell you what to do. They can, of course, do that if that's what they want.
Because it's theirs. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I
That's
think
it.
it's this. It's, you can complain about it and say it's dumb, or like yourself, Jay and Ian are doing, and say, well, we can do something about it.
For sure.
And present an alternative where, like, I can like say to my lifters, look, you can lift at USAPL Euro Tour, and then you can go across and do ab series in November, and it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
It's all going to be fine.
That's
you
it.
know? And I would love in the long run, because I imagine this sentiment is actually reflected. And it's one of the things I want to say because we need to specify that the Irish PF, I think it's a case of the people we know that were in the warm-up room with all the time, they would love for Article 14 not to exist.
Of course.
They would love for it not to exist.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would fight that.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You know, like I think it's that. Like, and in saying that, I think it's also worth noting that the IPF, for what it is, has done a lot of good work to help make powerlifting a much more like respected and legitimized sport. And it's just a shame now over the past like maybe 4 or 5 years, it's kind of started to move in a direction that like is a little bit anti-participation, a little bit anti the growth of the sport outside of the scope of what they want.
But the opposite side, and again, when I try to say like a weighted view, I also understand it. Of like, they are the ones that have put in the hard work, they've put in the money, they've created this huge pull of this style of powerlifting. And now they're kind of saying, that's ours, and no one else takes it from us. So I do understand it. And that's what I mean when I say I throw no shade of like, I understand where it's coming from. It's a complete business move. It makes complete sense. Continue on. Do you know what I mean? And that's all I mean by that, you know? Yeah.
So you've done what is the most logical thing for you, and just reoriented resources towards a thing that is better reflective of your view of what powerlifting is.
That's it, yeah.
So talk me through it then from your perspective. What happens with USAPL Ireland coming into 2024?
2024. Our objective, get a few good comps under our belt. Make sure that we know like the inner workings of things. Is everything running smooth? Now, I doubt it won't be, you know, considering that we've all run comps and, you know, the height of Jay running comps with the AB Series and ABS Pro, that won't fall flat in its face. But our ideas are like, okay, how do we put something in place, get a really good year under our belt, get a team together, and then bring them to, if it's like a Euro Tour comp, if it's an international comp, because the USAPL has all these lining up. So how do we bring this style of powerlifting over here? And that's just going to take a year for us to get through.
Yeah.
A couple of cool venues that people know about, 1 or 2 that they don't in time. And that's all we have to do, is just get a good year under our belt.
What is your own personal view of success after USAPL's first Open in February? What would be a successful meet for you?
Ooh, very good question. I think the one thing we've been talking about, the three of us, is if everyone left saying, that was a killer comp. Like if they really, really enjoyed it. And kind of like the night that we were on with you after the ABS comp, if everyone said like, you know, kind of felt like a bit of a superstar on this big stage, music going, like just it being crazy. You know, like we are trying to create an atmosphere that's unbeatable. Now, that will, you know, everyone else will try to beat that as well, which is great. But that's what we want. If someone leaves and they feel like a superstar for that day, job done.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question, because every time I talk about USAPL Ireland on like I get like a Q&A box written on Instagram, people say, "What's the story with the name?"
Man, I get this nonstop, and I get it. You know what I mean? Like I get it. People are like, "Oh, just going to put USA in front of Ireland." I completely get it. There are workarounds. We can call it something different, and I can't confirm it yet because we're talking about it, but we probably will call it the alternative name in the year coming. But I do get, even I was chatting with Connor and Adam at one point before they did the podcast, and I said to him, just please don't bring up the name. It's the only thing I ask you. Just leave us alone with that until we have it figured out. And it was the first thing, and I was saying to him, "You fuckers, is the only thing I asked you." You know?
They did that because you said that.
Of course. No, playing devil's advocate, but like, it is the one thing I know. It sounds a bit silly.
No. Well, do you know? I will say this is like, there's two things. One is, I think if the only problem people can find is a name, that's not a bad thing,
for sure.
And then the other piece of it is like, right, don't get me wrong, I get it. It is actually kind of like, I wouldn't say silly, but I get for people that there might be like, why is it USAPL Ireland, right? It doesn't make sense to me, but I get from like a brand logo and like recognition standpoint, in its formative year, it probably has a bit of validity, but I would advocate for it to have its own name in the long run, to say like, oh, this is XYZ, an affiliate of USAPL, you know?
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at, exactly.
Because I also think it'd be cool if it had its own logo here and then the USAPL logo here.
That'd be so cool.
You know, I'm just man. Listen, that's it.
You're just designing apparel for us,
man. People want it, like, you know what I mean. People want it. You know, they want cool stuff. You know, and this is kind of one of the things I'm happy to see powerlifting meets doing now, because I remember. Like when I would attend powerlifting meets the first few times that I did, I would always look for where's the first ever powerlifting meet I attended formally was in Abs. It was the Leinster Open. Mark Stell was lifting at it, so was Keane Madden. And A7 had a stand, and I bought a bar grip t-shirt and like wrist wraps or something. And I still have it's the OG Ireland bar. It just says Ireland in the colour.
I know it. Yeah.
I bought that because I was like, I want something from my first meet. I have my first ever t-shirt from my first ever meet from Ab Series Event 1. I have the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and then they all just became the logo in different colors. So it kind of like lost its luster for me. I was like, I've got a million of these now. Like, but same when I was down with you guys and I saw the Hard Work Not Luck t-shirt, I was like, that is badass, man. So I needed to have one, and you very kindly gave me one. They're cool, you know. A lot of the Rascal stuff is really cool. I think it's great that we exist in a niche where we can have our own merch that only makes sense to us. Like, you know, have you ever seen, you know, the RP11 t-shirt, the guy getting electrocuted? Like, I like that. People in the street will have no idea what that means, but that's a thing that we'll get.
Yeah, they have no idea.
That's awesome. Like,
even some of the stuff that we put out, like, you know, like the retro tape shirt.
Yeah, amazing.
People are reading it and they're like, what are these films? I've never seen these. I'm like, of course you haven't seen the February Open. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But like, the people out, you're right, people outside, do you know what I mean? They just don't get it. But I love that. I love the apparel side of things.
That VH, the Stack of Tapes t-shirt, that's the first one I remember going, now somebody's actually getting it. They get that we can do so much with apparel, like with just cool stuff, and particularly for commemorative stuff. Like that year of those meets for the CityGym lifters, all the ones that you had big names at, that series of events won't exist again. That's a snapshot in time.
That's it.
For, like, you know, I love that idea. That's like a huge thing in football. It's a huge thing in other sports. You have that season.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's absolutely everywhere else you go, but we don't have it in powerlifting yet. And we hit the Lonely Barbell. I love that one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like I have the now the CityGym October Open t-shirt. Is the Halloween.
I love that one. Yeah, that was so cool.
That's actually quite a tidy t-shirt. I actually quite like that.
Do you know, like, but this is the thing of like, we got to do a themed shirt for a comp.
Yeah.
And it's sold out.
And can I ask then, is that going to be a big plan for you guys moving in for with USAPL Ireland? Do you want to do your own brand? It's cool. Because I'm sure there's so many people that are like into that side of things that are going to be excited for it. Like, I mean, from a business standpoint, I think it's going to be huge. And I think like that, like you mentioned, it doesn't have to be USAPL Ireland versus Irish Powerlifting Federation.
Yeah.
It can be a nice, healthy competitiveness where, and I would always advocate for this, watch the idea that the other person does and then fucking steal the good idea.
For sure.
You know, if they see that like USAPL does a good run of merch or has a merch store online, what's to stop the federation from doing the exact same thing, and everybody benefits?
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, I think like, again, that healthy level of competitiveness, it's a good thing of like, oh, I saw it. That is really cool. And like, you almost you want to create something where like you get that feeling of like, wow, that's really cool. I want that as well, you know? Even right before we clicked on, I saw Phenom just launch a new t-shirt, like 5 minutes before we clicked onto this. I was like, that's fucking unreal. So I went on, I'm going to buy one right after this. But now I want to do something like that as well because I think it's unreal. But this is the kind of thing of like, I love that. How do you take it, swap it around a little bit, make it your own thing and grow it? But that's where it comes from, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Love that.
Right, last question I have for you.
Shoot, man.
So this is kind of like a big open-ended one for you. So we kind of know where we want USAPL to go over the next year. What's the future for Gar Benn and CityGym? What is next? Because it seems like the last like 4 or 5 years in a row, you've just threw yourself into something different and it's become this massive success, whether it's a supplement company, an apparel brand, a powerlifting conference, your own gym, your own powerlifting federation. What's next?
I don't know, man. I don't know. And that's legitimately, I don't know. It's unusual. Kind of like we were talking about before. This is probably not the answer you were looking for now. It's more kind of philosophical, right?
Philosophical.
We were kind of talking about this this idea of like being quite manic after the surgeries of like, if I can keep my wheels spinning and keep moving, I won't think of the worries or fears I have of this thing happening again. And you throw yourself into work at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it's really, really cool. So like you're building all this stuff and it feels very healthy. But it got to a point where I was like literally working all day, every day to like a very unhealthy level. And it's odd. If you were to do that with anything else, people would step in and stop you. Right, Joe? If you were to, pick up a drink every day and like floor it down, people are like, oh, you need to relax with the drink. Or, no matter what it is, if you throw yourself, even training, if someone was training 6-7 hours a day, someone would stop you.
Yeah.
But people commend you for working that much and that hard. This kind of hustle culture, And it is very, very cool. Like I think I've ended up in a place where I can relax a little bit and like let go of that real tight rein I had and things and go, geez, I accidentally ended up in a great place. Like through all this hard work, I've ended up in a great place. And it's nice to kind of step back and what would the phrase be? Kind of like step back and smell the flowers or look at the roses.
Smell the roses.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
For sure.
It's nice to do that. And like we've got year 10 coming up. So like August 14th, next year, 2024, that's 10 years done, man. It's a decade of my life. And I mean like fully wholeheartedly in this gym. And that's incredible. So like it's keep growing for sure. But it kind of makes you kind of reflect and say, well, how do we do things better for those who've supported us for so many years as well?
Yeah.
Not that you're not thinking that already, but it's like, how do we go a little bit bigger for everyone that's been there the whole time? And it's cool to see it come around full circle to 10 years because, it started as like, I don't know if I'll see 10 more years of life. And now it's like, holy shit, this is 10 years of my gym.
It's huge.
It's awesome, man. It's really awesome.
Incidentally, as you mentioned that, are there particular people that stand out in your mind as like, day ones, people that you'll be able to say, I'm so grateful for this person because they were integral in the success of CityGym or any other project?
Oh man, like I would love to name them. There's too many.
Yeah.
But like
you'd leave someone out and they'd be like, Gar, you
that's the wording.
That's
because there's so many, you would leave someone out. But like there are so many people that have coached with us over the years.
Yeah.
I could not love them anymore. That's like they've, in every single way, anyone that has coached with CityGym has contributed to its success massively. Do you know what I mean? And then we have like, there are core pockets of members, which every gym and every club has, that have in their own way driven CityGym to different heights at different times. And like, we really have a good group of people, man. I don't mean just now. I mean, like we've always had a great group of people. Even if like everywhere has their little fights or little disagreements or anything.
That's normal.
It's normal. When you look back on it, you think that like, Jesus, these have been the best 10 years of my life. Do you know what I mean? It's really incredible. Like between that, getting married, having kids, like that's, it's a good 10 years, man.
That's a successful life you're living, Gar Benn.
Man, I could die a happy man today. Now let's hope I don't, but
10 more years.
10 more years. Yeah, let's try to get that.
Yeah. No, like I actually love everything you've said there because I think it's one thing to be hyper driven and motivated, but then to have the like introspection to be able to stop and go, fuck, I'm lucky to be here.
Yeah. Oh, no, and that's a big thing, man, of like, just put, like, we've gone far enough that I can pull off the gas and actually enjoy where we're at. Because otherwise, where do you go? It's great to be ambitious. Like a healthy level of ambition is fantastic. But like, do you just, just keep plowing on, more members, more money? For what reason? Do you know, like, more money is just stacking money.
Yeah.
Money has to be a means to an end, not the end.
Yeah, 100%, man.
You know what I mean?
Couldn't have said that better myself, Like, I think as well, it's to recognize as well, though, because obviously you went through this series of hardships very early in your young adult life. To turn that into motivation, or like a fire in your belly, not just in your lungs, to be able to achieve everything you've achieved. And you're still quite a young guy. You're only in your mid-30s. Like, to have achieved all that, to then be able to say, I have gotten to a point where things have gone so well and I've worked so hard that I actually can enjoy time with my wife and my kids and be grateful for the amazing opportunities I've been granted. But to be able to do that and still go into 2024 going, here we go, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's it, that healthy level of ambition of like, it doesn't mean that like we stop, but maybe I can, as you said, spend more time with the wife and kids. Or at times you'll be on the gym floor and you're thinking, oh, what more can I do? When in reality, you're like, I could enjoy this with the people around me. That makes way more sense. Do you know what I mean? And like, oftentimes I do stop, and I probably sound like a bit of a soppy old sod at times, but like, geez, I love this. Do you know what I mean? I absolutely love this. And you see people enjoying themselves, getting stronger, better. It's an incredible feeling.
Yeah. I think that's a nice place to leave it, man.
For sure, man.
Gar Benn, thank you very much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.